How to calculate latitude. Latitude is a measurement of how far north or how far south you are from the equator. You would be 90 degrees north at the North Pole, 0 degrees at the equator, and 90 degrees south at the South Pole. The North Star, Polaris, always stays above the North Pole, even though the Earth is rotating. Therefore, it is a constant reference point for navigators. Light rays from the North Star travel to the Earth in parallel lines. The angle of latitude varies depending on how far north or south you are from the equator. As you can see from this diagram, if you stood on the North Pole and looked 90 degrees up from the horizon, the light from the North Star would be directly above you. Therefore, your latitude is 90 degrees north. However, if you were in Whitby, you would only need to look up 54.4 degrees from the horizon to see the North Star. Therefore, your latitude is 54.4 degrees north. And finally, if you were on the equator, the light from the North Star would be directly parallel with the horizon. Therefore, your latitude is 0 degrees. But how do you find the North Star? Well, navigators were able to do this by looking at the constellations around it. Here you can see that the North Star is situated between the Plough and Cassiopeia at the end of the Little Dipper. And so at sea, if you could measure the angle from the horizon to the North Star, that altitude angle would be your latitude. Note, you can also use the altitude angle of the Sun to calculate latitude, provided you have the appropriate navigation conversion tables. But what about the Southern Hemisphere, where the North Star isn't visible? Well, navigators such as Captain Cook were able to use other reference stars and constellations, such as the Southern Cross. How do we measure latitude then? Well, we can use an instrument called a quadrant. And here's an example of a quadrant that we have made. If you look through the straw and try to find the light from the North Star, you will notice that the angle shown on the quadrant will vary depending on how high or low you have to look. Note, in this example, you can see the plumb line, that is the string with the weight on it, showing an angle of 20 degrees. So in this case, your latitude would be 20 degrees north. The quadrant was replaced in 1731 by an instrument called the sextant. The sextant was more accurate and much easier to use on a rough sea than the quadrant. It had no plumb line, which can move about in storms. Instead, it has an index bar and an arc attached. It also uses mirrors and filters, so it can be safely used to measure the angle of the sun. Prior to this invention, many navigators lost their sight by directly looking at the sun with a quadrant.